Episode 23. Episode 23 of Liam Small, Abridges, A History of Newfoundland by D.W. Prowse. 15 to 20 pages, most days, every day as best he can, or until the bars reopen. Welcome back. It is... I got this. It's Wednesday. Okay, cool. Yeah, episode 23. We're getting into it. In this installment, it's going to be a little bit shorter because we're reaching the end of the reign of King George III. It was fateful 60 years from, what was it, 1760 to 1820 or something like that? Bloody thing's gone out. So... last going off. Okay, so in the last episode we finished at the end of 1816, Christmas time to be specific, when the bubble sort of burst, and at first, with the winter of 1816 is when things got really tough for the fucking island. Remember, things were going really well for us during wartime, and then everyone declared peace. And then the economy sort of popped, and then we're in for some shitty times. Okay, so in 1816, by now, Newfoundland is essentially shut off because of the economic peacetime, so there's, all the British guys can do all their trading over in Europe, all the Americans can do their trading down there, and we're kind of like, hey, guys, remember us? And they were like, well, so there's that. Fortunately, at this terrible crisis, the virtual control of the colony was in the hands of a Captain David Buchan. RN, the able management and humane exertions of the heroic commander really helped us out, basically. During the trying winter, he put his own men on the HMS Pike on a short allowance. When the following address was presented to him by the grand jury, you, sir, were seen conspicuous in public exertions to afford only the refuge, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he was a good guy, did the best he could. He got in there, David Buchan, in a shitty situation, got thrown into there at a really crappy time. He's basically in complete control. No real help coming from England, the poor bastard. But yeah, he was a capable guy, probably one of the most able to handle, the times to come. The winter of the winter of 1817 to 1818 in Newfoundland was known as the Hard Winter, or the Winter of the Rals. I don't know what the RAL is, R-A-L-S. Anyway, the Hard Winter, I like Hard Winter, Betty Ray sounds like he's right hard. Scratch tickets, shit like that. The circle. Whatever it means. Anyway, so in 1815 and 1816, all we really had to worry about was starvation. In the following winters, starvation was basically turning into famine. There was no food supplies, and also, this is amazing, somehow frost and fires and famine all hit the island in that same winter. That's why it was called the Hard Winter. The boys just got absolutely fucking hit. So on top of the continuing lack of food and the starvation that was happening, which is now turned into famine, apparently a frost that sealed up the whole coast commenced in early November and continued almost without intermission through the entire season. And on the nights of the 7th and 21st of November, 1817, 300 houses were burnt, rendering 2,000 individuals in depth of that cruel winter completely homeless. So, things couldn't get any better. Not bad enough we were starving, not bad enough that it was freezing fucking cold, but now we're going to set fire to all your houses, and now there's 2,000 homeless people running around St. John's in the area. If 2,000 people lost their homes right now, that would be a fucking problem. Back then, that's huge. So that's great. I just got a quote here. Nothing to add to simple case. So it's just the grand jury's presentment or statement. Calamities so extensive would have been in our most prosperous times Calamities so extensive would have been in our most prosperous times productive of severe distress, but on retrospecting to our situation for the last 3 years, during which period we have alternately suffered by fire, by famine, by lawless outrage, and numerous mercantile failures which have greatly injured the commercial reputation of the town, the recent conflagrations seemed only wanting to consummate our misfortunes. Several hundred men in the prime of their life, without money and or the means of being employed, without adequate clothing or food, are at the hour of midnight wandering amidst the smoking ruins of their houses, to seek warmth from the ashes and food from the refuse of the half-consumed fish. In dwelling houses, the misery is a little less. Many families, once in affluence, are now in absolute want. Within these 2 days, 2 men have been found perished of cold, and many hundreds must inevitably experience a similar fate if humanity does not properly and efficiently step forward to their relief. That's, it's not good. It's not boys fucking crawling through the ashes of their houses just to stay warm. So, yeah, and even that all said, given everything was going on, this Captain Buchan guy, he still, like, apparently would instill confidence in people. He had confidence and safety, you know, like, he's like, we're gonna get through this. So he must have been at least a halfway inspiring guy. To add to this misery, gangs of half-famished, lawless men everywhere threatened the destruction of life and property. Vigilance committees were formed in every settlement. What do we got here? In St. John's and every outport, his presence brought tranquility. That's talking about Captain Buchan. In St. John's and every just read that. He brought tranquility. All caught the contagion of his splendid courage. The suffering endured during that winter that no pen can fully describe. It was called the Hard Winter. So that fucking sucks. City caught fire. The ice was so blocked up, nothing could get in. Everyone's starving, and people were burning stuff and looting everybody. That's good. That's good. Things are going great. Whereas, like, 3 years ago, things were fine, you know? Okay. Now, in, what else we got here? One last note. During these unhappy years, everything was against us. Even the seal fishery failed in 1817, so literally nothing. Then it says, in the spring of 1818, this period of calamity came to an end. The seal fishery was unusually productive. In less than a fortnight, scores of little vessels returned, loaded to the scuppers with fat. Hope received, the fisheries were good, the markets improved, and the poor old colony once again began to lift her head. The governor was now a fellow named Sir Francis Pickmore. He had been ordered to remain throughout the winter in Newfoundland. This was because the guys were getting a little bit sick of having a governor for like the 3 good months of the year, and then during the winter when shit got really hard and trying, and probably when you need leadership and stuff, they're all gone back to Europe and stuff like that. So again, if the water freezes up and you can't get messages back and forth, this is a real problem. So now this guy Pickmore, he's the first governor. He's gonna be more of a permanent resident, and that complaint that the governors would leave actually came from our old buddy Dr. Carson. Remember that cantankerous old arsehole who was writing letters and scaring the Jesus out of fucking governors and stuff? Well, it was actually one of his pamphlets that caused that whole thing to happen. So, which is, okay, that's a good thing, until Admiral Pickmore was a firm, courageous old man. But the toil, exposure, and anxiety of the last terrible winter told on his infenced constitution, and on the 24th of February, he died. So that idea kind of backfired. One confirmed the idea of the severity of the season from the fact that it took all of the crew of the HMS Fly, with the assistance of civilians, a whole fortnight to cut a channel through the ice. So it was just a fucking really bad, hard winter. Poor Pickmore. Just a real brief footnote in our little history. Okay, so during those couple years when everything was really, really hard, there's a note here that there was some aid sent over, and as things began to improve, it says here, On page 407, the sufferings of the Newfoundland colonists called forth humane response from all quarters. The British government sent £10,000. Halifax contributed liberally, but the most touching and generous gift was from the large-hearted people of Boston. A few years before, they were fitting out privateers just to fuck with us, basically. Our fishery, our vessels, all that shit. Now they send us a welcome shipload of provisions in the most inclement month of the year in January, so it wasn't easy to get here. The brig Messenger came to St. John's bearing the following address. There's a letter to fucking Pickmore. Anyway, on that boat, apparently it had 174 barrels of flour, 11 tierces of rice. I don't know what a tierce is. 125 barrels of meal, 27 barrels, and 963 bags of bread. So that is fucking worth something. Thank you, Boston. Appreciate it. Sorry about the wars. Okay, so going there. Moving on to the church for a quick second, where we have Bishop O'Donnell is done. Bishop O'Donnell is replaced by Bishop Lambert of the Franciscan Order. I don't know. I guess all of his contemporaries speak of him as a perfect gentleman, sometimes a little hasty, but genial, kind, and of preeminent social qualities. He dined out a good deal with the governor and the officers and merchants, entertaining them in return at his own hospitable board. So I guess he got along. And I guess that the only reason that really gets mentioned is here. It says because the first three Roman Catholic bishops in the colony, by their suavity of manner and their liberal, enlightened policy, contributed perhaps more than any others to promote harmony and peace in the community. So Catholicism, Protestantism, the Church of England, all that stuff. So these first three guys were setting a good example for what this whole fucking thing should be about. I've got a whole chunk here. Okay. Moving on to the church. Finished with the church. Now that was all that we had about the church there today. Page 4. Okay, more about the fucking French. It's like we can't finish. Okay. So, there were two treaties of peace with France around this time, in 1814 and one in 1815. St. Pierre Miquelon had been formally given back to our enemies in 1814. When suddenly, in 1815, Captain Buchan was sent out again to retake the islands and plant the Union Jack on the governor's staff. The taking and retaking of those two little islands was a regular jack-in-the-box affair. I don't know what that means. Before the peace, the merchants of St. John's had sent a very strong memorial to the Prince Regents, praying that in any future settlement, foreigners might be excluded from our fisheries. The governors vigorously supported the prayer of the memorial. His Royal Highness promised favorable consideration, but as usual, our interests are deliberately sacrificed. France had been completely conquered, so why in the fuck, then, did she recover her position on the Newfoundland coast? How is it after being completely vanquished, they still got St. Pierre, is what DW is fucking asking here. Castlegray's answer is characteristic, whoever that guy is. Castleray. Castle... I don't know if that's a person's last name or not. Castlegray's answer is characteristic. It says, the European sovereigns wanted to make the Bourbons popular with the French people, as in, like, the liquor, bourbon. For the sake of the incapable, unteachable Louis the... Where are we at with Louis now? The unteachable Louis the 18th, a galling yoke was thrown around the necks of British colonists. It is the flimsiest and most paltry excuse for a great diplomatic blunder. So basically England said that they wanted to get the French caught up on what I guess was bourbon from fucking the States. Was the only reason that you would be so close? Like, they just gave it away again. I love St. Pierre. Some of the most important people in my life are from St. Pierre. It's a lovely place. I have nothing against St. Pierre. I would go there tomorrow if we were allowed to fucking fly anywhere. But, like, why is it theirs, right? It's just, it's a little... The back and forth has been a little bit strange, to say the least. These weird fucking deals. Okay, so that's the French. St. Pierre got that knocked out of the park. So on the death of Admiral Pickmore, he didn't last very fucking long, Captain Bowker of the Admiral's ship was acting governor until the arrival of Sir Charles Hamilton, He's an important guy. In July 1818 is when he shows up. In the beginning of September of that year, another fire broke out in St. John's, which consumed 12 houses and part of the ordnance property. And in 1819, yet another destructive conflagration, which destroyed 120 houses at the western end of the town. The losses were estimated at £120,000 sterling. There can be very little doubt that these fires were the work of incendiaries, so arsonists, probably intentional. This is, what a ride this episode has been. Although for the time these recurring calamities caused great privations and misery, the result was a great improvement in the laying out of the city. Well, that's good. This is where we get Water Street and Duckworth Street, formerly narrow lanes, were now built up with good, substantial houses. They were widened to 50 feet. Apparently, we're still working on Water Street. The new governor was chiefly remarkable for his stern, unbending conservatism. The most important event during his tenure in office was what is called the Convention of 1818 with America. And I've got that on page 409 for tenure. Okay, so here's, again, because they call it like the most important part of his governing, Mr. Hamilton there. So, okay, so, and this is where America kind of comes back to Newfoundland. I don't know if this has got a lot to do with them being so cool with us when we were starving to death a couple years ago. It was agreed that the inhabitants of the United States should have forever, in common with the subject of His Britannic Majesty, the liberty to take fish of every kind on that part of the southern coast of Newfoundland, extending from Cape Ray to the Remote Islands. On the western and northern coast, from Cape Ray to the Kirpon Islands, on the shores of the Magdalen Islands, and also on the coast, the bays, harbors, and creeks from Mount Jolie to the southern coast of Labrador, to and through the Straits of Belle Isle, and hence northwardly indefinitely everywhere is what that's a long way of saying. Can we just please fish everywhere? Cool. So the convention further provided that the American fishermen should also have liberty forever to dry and cure fish in any of the unsettled bays, harbors, and creeks on the southern part of the coast of Newfoundland, above described, and the coast of Labrador, again, everywhere. But so soon as the same as any position thereof should be settled, and there was not to be lawful for the said fishermen to dry or cure fish such portions so settled without previous agreement for such purpose for the inhabitants, proprietors, or possessors of said ground. It's a fancy way of saying, America, you're welcome to come back here and fish and settle up if you're settling somewhere where we weren't already. Just, it's a long... Man, they were fancy with their words. So, page 409, 410. There's some last little thing here about two, arseholes named Butler and Lundrigan. There's an agitation for representative government in the year 1819, and it received great attention, I guess, in the case of this Butler and Lundrigan guy. I don't know what they did. They didn't appear on summons, and they were considered guilty in contempt of court. Lundrigan was tied up and flogged by the boatswain of a ship until he fainted under the severity of his punishment. Yeah, he was whipped in the back for a whole bunch of times, so I guess it was considered to be pretty brutal and cruel punishment. I mean, men passed out for... Because I guess it was something small. So they're just kind of like, well, that's like a little bit. So they used it as a lever to obtain a legislature for the colony. Petitions were presented to both the House and Parliament, and was sent to England to work up the case. There's no doubt that this agitation very much forwarded the demand for a local government. So yeah, I guess this case kind of is important. It was more or less a straw that broke the camel's back. A straw that whipped the camel's back. Lords Holland and Darnley the Lords, and they celebrated Sir James Mackintosh and Dr. Lundrigan in the Commons was the Jurisdiction Act and Expression of Sir Cuts. I don't know if they passed it or not, but anyway, we made a petition, we went to England. Generally, that hasn't gone so well for us, but eventually we're going to get government, because I think we had one. I don't know. So, that takes us to the end of Chapter 13, King George III, and that's brings me to this sweet, sweet appendix. Man, it's been a bunch of episodes since I got to feast on a little break, an appendix. So anyway, just a quick recap of some of the things that have happened in this episode, or the last couple episodes. There's the recapture of St. John's in September 1762. There's a bunch of shit about that. English killed and wounded, a whole bunch more stuff, yada yada yada. The Bermudans and the bank fisher. Remember when the Bermudans came up and we were like, they won't mind this. And then we were like, holy shit, they're really good at this and quite capable. DW used some big words that I'm not going to repeat. The conspiracy of St. John's in 1799 and 1800. This was actually kind of interesting because the conspiracy of St. John's was like, guys had taken oaths in the United Irishmen, but there was going to be like a slaughter. There was a plot, a conspiracy to take out, I don't know if it was just magistrates and government types or what the deal was, but yeah, there was a pretty big thing. This force for security, just want to make sure. Anyway, that was the whole thing. Said I was going to take the appendix. I'm going to take a win when I can get one in this whole fucking thing. The early seal fishery, we talked briefly about that. I was wanting to go up and make it happen in Labrador and North that and on the West Coast. And that's pretty much it. That takes us to chapter 14 for tomorrow, where we will. Chapter 14 covers the reign of King George IV and the reign of William IV. I think that's it. Yeah. So we're gonna deal with that tomorrow. A little bit of a shorter one here today. I don't mind that because this isn't fun for me. Anyway, another day, no cases. Keep locking her down, boys and girls. I hope everyone is healthy and safe. My friends in Nova Scotia, I hope you guys are doing okay. As if things aren't bad enough. Pardon me, take a drink. I wasn't going to get through this without burping. Alright, see you tomorrow, gang. Have fun. Yeah.